Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thanks, sir. Glad to be on.
Now, I'm honored to have you on. I'm sure everybody heard your bio in the intro. I told you I didn't want to say it during the show because that would take up the whole podcast episode, but you are so much knowledge. Kind of take us back. How did you get your start in the pawn industry?
Wow. You can go back to 1988. I was waiting on a job for Reebok to be a tech rep in the athletic world, and it didn't start for 90 days. And one of my friends worked for a company called Cash America, and I'd never been in a pawn shop a day in my life, and went to an open cattle call. And an individual there who is still a mentor of mine today by the name of David Johns interviewed me. And within an hour of that interview, convinced me that I could be a pawnbroker. And then started in the industry, and then have been very, very lucky to have multiple people who have many years of in this industry teach me so many great things and simplified it for me. And that was my start. And then 31 years later, I still enjoy and love and have so much passion for this business and love sharing all the knowledge I can to help anyone who wants to learn. It's about how we all are successful.
And I love it because, I mean, you did Cash America, Value Pawn. You can name Cash Wiz. You've worked with, you're working now with National Pawn, which I think is one of the best chains in the nation, if not worldwide. Your career started as a pawnbroker, and then how did you make it kind of to like the leadership roles? What did you see in those roles that you said, man, I'm cut out for this. I'm cut out to lead people and to make things happen for these businesses?
I guess it comes to the same thing, in all the years, I've spent 15 years on the counter, day in and day out. And I started first 5 years was working stores and worked my way from a small volume to a large volume, and had the fortunate to have a lot of good people who worked for me. We did a whole lot of training and cross training, so everybody knew how to do every job, which then made my life easier. And that just kind of progressed into the multi-unit role. I always joke when I went from running one store to 5 stores and had no clue what I was doing for about the first year. And you knew how to act when you went to the store, but I didn't know the leadership part. So I was very lucky and had someone take me under their wing and started teaching me leadership and development. And then I became an avid reader about leadership, and then practicing it, and then reading everything you can. And talking to everybody you can in any industry who's in phenomenal leadership roles, because it's amazing how much of it crosses back and forth in our businesses.
Talking about leadership really quickly, because a lot of times I feel like pawnbrokers either don't believe me, and it's why I called the show the Pawn Leaders Podcast and the company the Pawn Leaders. How important is leadership in growing the pawn shops that you've been working with?
Oh, it is the most important thing. Without having strong leaders, especially at store level, you will always not be able to truly succeed where you want to. I always used to have a quote that says, when you dabble, you never have true success. And if you have managers who are dabbling in their day-to-day business, they just never achieve the success that they possibly can. Yes, they might be winning, but at that point, how much more could we be achieving, and how much more success could you have long term?
Love it. So what does that look like when you talk about like leadership, right? A lot of people who listen to this are, one store operators, 2 store operators. They might have a manager, might have an assistant manager. What does an incredible leader in that role look like?
I'm going to be a little philosophical, but I think they have to have a defining moment for their business. And that is when they start doing what's right for the business and the customer, and not what's right for all their employees. Then you start changing how you view what's important, what's not important. There's always going to be problems. There's always going to be concerns or challenges. But if you have that true defining moment for the business, and normally that comes back to revenue and driving the business, then that's when you have the ultimate change in your vision. That was my key when I had the true defining moment. And that's when I started really choosing to do what's right for the business and the customer versus the employee.
Can you go back in time and tell us about that defining moment? Like what happened, how it happened?
Yeah, it's a funny story. I asked two young men to help me re-merchandise an end cap. And like everybody else, I could do it bigger, better, faster, stronger in my mind. And they were taking way too long to put 4 keyboards on an end cap of a shelf. So I went over there and said, get out of my way. I'll show you how to do it, and got it done real fast. And stopped and stood back and looked at my work and turned over and looked to the left. And I had my 2 employees leaning on the counter watching me work. And at that moment I said, I am the dumbest human being in the world. I'm paying these 2 guys to watch me work. That was my defining moment.
And so what did you do from that point? I mean, that defining moment happened, and what did you say in your mind? You're like, this can't happen anymore.
I started reading some severe books about understanding, being proactive, being explaining things. Our biggest concern is we don't communicate well. We just tell somebody to do something, but we don't explain why or how, or give them some kind of layout and let them maybe articulate it in their own form. It's not going to be how I wanted it or someone else wanted, but their own form. And that's when you find so many amazing things, when you allow people to articulate for themselves on what their vision could be within the vision of the process.
It's incredible how much lack of clarity and assumptions happen in a business setting when you think that you're paying somebody to listen and do what you want them to do. But the truth is neither party is really communicating, like you just said. And the expectations of it doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's amazing with the lack of communication, how many things fail very, very quickly, even though when you think you did communicate, you probably really didn't. That's why there was a failure. Yeah. Or then it comes back to that whole willingness and behaviors things. Are they unwilling and their behaviors show you or not show you?
And just so people know, I mean, how many stores do you run? How many people are you guys?
We have 19 stores and we've got 172 total associates now within the company and still growing.
So for those of you who are listening, who are thinking like, man, you know, I can't get this done. This is a lot of information. Leadership wise, it's so important. I mean, this 19 stores, 172 people to lead.
Yeah. And I am very thankful. I know I work with the greatest leadership team in middle management in our industry. I always say I'm a little biased to that, but I'll take my group over anybody's group. And I've been with some phenomenal organizations.
No, I would take your group as well. I know a lot of the guys that you work with, and they have ownership mentality.
Yes.
They're consistently bettering themselves as people.
Yes.
And as professionals.
Yeah, we challenge ourselves. And in our own meetings, we challenge ourselves. We challenge the processes that we believe in doing daily, and do they still apply in today's universe or world? And if not, we've got to reinvent the way of doing it. You know, it's no different than like our workforce is different than it was 10 years ago. The millennials are almost 45% of your management staff, and most of us never dealt with millennials in a day in our life. And how we communicate to them is different than how we communicated to other people 10 years ago. And we challenge that every day and challenge our process without ever forgetting our core.
Yeah. Jeff, let me ask you this. For the people listening, let's say it's a shop owner, has a manager, has a couple of staff members. What's the one thing that they need to do in order to lead to a higher level? What's the one thing that you would implement at a store to be able to grow?
Trust your team and let them make mistakes, because it's the only way they can learn through them. We have a tendency not to let anyone learn because either we have scarcity mentality. We don't want anyone to know anything. And that would be the number one thing. Allow them to learn the process. They will make your life easier in the future.
Love that. So many times you like you just said, we don't let them make mistakes because of that scarcity mentality. Love that, man. I agree. Yep. And you don't know what they can do if you don't let them make mistakes, what they're capable of.
So true. You'll be amazed that someone can pull something off that you didn't think they were capable, and now you're that much stronger and that much more developed than you ever were before.
Yeah. Now, talking about communication, I had the honor and privilege of being on one of you guys' weekly webinars, right? That Don does. And there was so much motivation. But the one thing I saw was so much clarity. Like, these are the rules, these are the numbers, this is what's happening, these are the numbers, like kind of like an indoctrination, if you would say, of we want as much transparency and clarity as possible. How important is that for all the companies that you've worked with, transparency and clarity from the ownership all the way down?
Well, it's been the backbone of the success of from Value Pawn and Jewelry on, of everything that we've done. The more clarity you give and the more information that you have out there that's consistent and it's the same message delivered, you'll be amazed on what can be achieved on somebody who's not sure. There's no chance for interpretation that way. Don has given the message out each time based on the needs of the business today. And that is a moving, breathing entity. So it is gold. It is paramount for our future. And it's really going to determine the long-term success of us, because we're able to move and react quicker than maybe others are, because it's part of our culture and our foundation.
And for those of you who don't know what that webinar is basically you guys on a weekly basis have a couple of webinar times where staff can join in, and Dawn's basically, like you said, saying the needs of the business at the moment, telling the numbers, what's going on, celebrating, right? The winners of the layaway challenge, or whoever sold the most, whoever pawned the most. So there's celebration, there's clarity, which is incredible. And that's how you guys continue pushing that culture to 172 people on staff.
Correct. Our numbers, our daily report is given out to all of our employees. We want all of our team members to know how well we're doing, and without the account managers, which we call our associates, because they're managing their business. Without them, we don't exist. I don't get to sit here without those folks. And that's the whole message. Is we all know that sometimes our managers don't always come back from a managers meeting fired up and deliver the information as clear as maybe they got it in the meeting. So we've kind of taken that approach to make sure that message is given out clearly, and now it reinforces it again and again. And then again, consistency is the ultimate goal for success.
Yeah. Let's talk about that real quick. I went to go visit National Pawn, and there's tons of consistency, right? I mean, right behind you, people can't see this, but there's still sales standards, loan standards, and 7 essential questions right behind you. And the stores are consistent. The looks are consistent. The attire is consistent. The daily, you guys have like daily workbooks are consistent. How do you guys keep track of all that consistency?
Well, that's always going to be a challenge every day. And it always will be the challenge. The consistency it's what the culture is. The standards are just basically, they're nothing exciting. They're 101 customer service engagement skills. And the more you do them, the more success you'll have. And that is our goal, is to teach folks that important. It's about looking at the selection process. You had Kim on, and she was talking about hiring and the needs of hiring the right person that fits our culture. And you've had other people on who have talked about the TTS and how it works. And it's not gospel, but it's pretty close to being right after 30 years of being in our industry. And then you put the right people in the right position, and you allow them to do it, and you give them the freedom to do it. And then again, so many amazing things happen when you allow the culture to organically take hold on its own. When you infuse culture by force, it lasts very shortly. When you infuse culture and let it organically happen, it is longevity.
I
And
love that.
And so many things can happen in the right way from all the things that we do every day in that same concepts. We're not perfect. We're not always doing things right, but I always say, but at least if we're consistently doing something wrong, we're doing something right.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, you guys consistently take action and consistently moving, and that's what matters. And I think that's when you guys are okay with, hey, that didn't work out. Let me adjust. Let's move forward. Hey, that didn't work out. Let me adjust. Let's move forward.
We have to. This is the only industry where our transaction's a living, breathing entity from start to finish. We're not a retailer. That we get to do retail, but even that retail has a heartbeat. The faster I sell it, the faster I can get that money back out on the loans again. And as we know, without the loans, I don't exist, period.
Yeah.
And that's the key. And those are things that we're trying to drive. And, I just joke, I'm not real smart. I learned these 4 simple things. Figure out how to sell money in a quality pawn or buy and not say no. Don't look for a reason to say no. Find a reason to say yes. Then collect on that money. Make your phone calls. Collect what's due. Pop and pause. Whatever they owe you, that's what you ask. Then sell that stuff. Price it right to move it. So I can go do that all over again. And if I do that consistently, that flywheel just keeps spinning, and I just keep making revenues and profit, and customers just keep coming back. And that's a beautiful thing.
I love that. What do you see happening in the pawn industry right now? Kind of like the biggest mistakes you see other pawn shops making, and maybe you guys make once in a while that you'd like to see change?
I think the biggest mistake that I've noticed in all the people that I talk to is they figure out how not to loan money.
Yeah.
And then they figure out how to have museums in their stores. Yeah. And it's easy for me to say. There's a lot of ways to make money in this industry, and I've met a lot of great pawnbrokers who make money by holding all their merchandise, and they make a nice living, and that's great. And I'm glad they're successful. But I think that's the number one, is not doing the business at the counter when the customer's in front of you, when you can, and most of them are over $1 and $5 increments, why we chose not to.
Yeah.
And then is not selling something when you had the opportunity to over a $5 or $10 increment. And then that will be it. And then of course the next thing is hiring somebody and then not training them and they stay.
I see that all the time, Jeff. Like, hey, yeah, I just hired a new person. They're not working out. Why not? I don't know. They just don't know what they're doing. How much did you train them? I just kind of threw them on the floor.
Yeah.
And hoped and prayed.
And most people, believe in not teaching anybody because then they might leave you. Our theory is let's teach them everything we can and why they're there and they're here. If we get 2 years with them, great. If they're productive, then we win as a company, because not everybody is going to stay in this industry for 30 years, 40 years, or whatever length that is. So you develop, you teach, and you let people thrive, and you give them the platform to be successful, and you don't hold them back.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of times we talk about transparency. A lot of pawnbrokers aren't transparent with their staff. They don't give in to them as much as they should because of this old school mentality, unfortunately. There's also, I think one of the other problems that happen is that people don't train their staff. Like, not train, they don't send them to things like you guys. I mean, you guys were at the MPA and there were managers with you. Every event I go to, your management staff is there somehow, right? You guys are training your people. What has it done for you guys as an organization, having them tap into what's going on in the pawn world?
It's huge that they get a chance to hear what other people were doing positively and negatively. And you can learn from negatives and positives from anybody. And it gives them the opportunity to realize that, oh, I might not be as bad as I think I am. Yeah. And the other way is, wow, we were better than maybe what we should be, or could be, or what could we even be better. So it's about, anytime you get the opportunity to challenge your mind and your growth as a business, you have the chance to make changes in that business model. Whether you're winning or losing, it's still the same outcome. I always said, when you're winning big, you need to look just as hard if you're losing, because tomorrow you might not win big. And what did you do to start winning big? And that's where a lot of people make mistakes. As you know by my bio, I'm a huge sports person, and I'm an avid reader. And one of my favorite books is Lou Holtz's Do Right at Notre Dame. And he said, when he took over Notre Dame, they were an average team. Then they became a very competitive team. Then they became a national contender, but then they became complacent, where 10 wins a year was okay. And then that's what they became, was a complacent 10-year team. And that's not the standard. The standard is to win the day, every day. And that is our goal at National Pawn. We win some, we lose some, but overall we're going to win more than we lose. And that is the key. Win the day, whatever it is, whatever that revenue goal is each day, that is our goal. And each store's got their own target to shoot at. And that is talked about through our message system throughout the day, about where we're at different times of the day, to keep people motivated. And one region is competing with another region. And it's done nothing but help drive our business and execute higher levels. And again, like I said, I am very fortunate to work with 172 people that deserve to be on this call more than I do, because they do all the work.
You're a humble man, my friend, humble man. Today on the mastermind call, something came up, and it really kind of ties into what you just said about daily goals. I said, you pretend to work because you don't plan to work. And you just talked about daily goals, right? And so if someone's coming into their pawn shop, there's no goal, there's nothing to look forward to, there's nothing to really get done that you've planned. You sit on Facebook all day, you're posting questions, you're doing this, you're doing that, but you're not hitting your goals. How important are those goals, the daily goals that you guys put in? How is that tracked? How is that implemented so that you guys are seeing that?
Well, it's tracked daily, every day through a comp report that comes out. It tells you where you're at versus the last 2-year run, where you're trending against budget. So if you're trending up or down daily. Then that's divided out, what's remaining balance each day. Automatically, it's on the report form, so that no one has to do any math anymore. And then it's divided out equally in our stores. So each day your goal. And then we can judge where we're at daily. Without that, you don't know where you're going. It's like, how can you get somewhere if you're not sure where you need to be? Or, the old joke Covey used to say, you ever been too busy driving to stop to get gas?
Yeah.
And that's the key. So without those, we would not be where we're at today, because that is the competitive side of what we're doing. Who is going to hit their day first? That's the key, is what store is going to say days in first. And everyone wants to be that first store. Some stores are, some stores aren't, but that is the key. That is the foundation, and that's the culture. And that culture was here before I got here. All we've done is taken it to another level. And that's the benefit of this, is that winning was here. Now winning is not, it's not a given anymore. You've got to earn that every day. And that's how we judge it. It's every day. I joke with Bob, the owner, and say, well, we beat budget again. I'm good for another month. So now, that was last month. Now it's a new month. So, and that's the key, because that's what we're judged on. Did we make budget?
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest things that you guys are about is not being complacent. And I think a lot of times pawnbrokers become complacent. And if you ask them, on a scale of 1 to 10, and you can answer this in your mind while you're driving or wherever you are, is how productive are you every single day? And some people will say 5 or 6. Well, imagine if you're an 8, what would happen? Imagine if you set those daily goals. Imagine if you were to achieve those daily goals, what would happen? And I think that's what you guys are doing so incredibly well. So,
and that's key. Think about, if you're a 5 and you just get 5.25, what does that mean in revenue? Yeah. I mean, it's the same as a dollar more a day on a transaction at the end of the year could be the difference whether you make it or you don't, calendar year. And it's huge. You don't think it is at the time, but when we get to magnify that over 19 stores times all the transactions, man, does that start adding up big, big, big. Yeah, and that's the power of a dollar. I always call it fighting for every inch.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think a lot of times, in the pawn world, I remember when I was a pawnbroker, we were a little bit spoiled because we have a business we have the luxury of people walking in. It's been making money for a long time. Pawn shops have been around for thousands of years. But if we don't change, a lot of businesses are going under. Or, guys like National come in, they've got this incredible culture and they just whoop your butt,
Well, again, that's now you're being kind, because I'm sure we're not as good as we think we are some days.
I think that a lot of times people have the capacity to do so much more, yet they stay in their comfort zone. And I think one of the things that I got on that webinar that you guys do, is you got to get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah. Don calls it SOSville, same old stuffville.
Yeah.
And it's so true. And I joked with him that he's just now created a new sign that will be in multiple pawn shops throughout the country before the next 2 years. Stay out of SOSville. Yeah. And that he's so true. And because we do the same old stuff every day in theory, but if you react the same every day, no, I'm not going to take that item, or we didn't make any money on the last one, so we're not taking that one, then you're in the same old place and you're not going to achieve any more success. So, that's what's so powerful about what we do daily. And again, like I said, it's the 172 people that do it, not me.
Yeah. Jeff, we've talked about some really cool stuff. I want to talk about what's been the hardest part of your pawn journey for you.
I guess early on, it was learning to trust people, learning to allow them to win without me trying to control everything. And that's a big mistake that all of us do. We try to control and strangle a store versus allowing a store to breathe. And it's amazing when you allow a store to breathe a little bit and just kind of let some things happen, they normally turn out in the right way, because we were all in Vegas, and I wish I had the odds of winning in Vegas like I have on the counter every day. Because I can't find anything else that have that good of odds. And that would be it. And then I would say not letting people, probably early on in my career, not have more of a say in how things should be. And so you learn those things. And I credit a lot of that to the training of Covey and understanding, seeking first to understand, then to be understood. And without that, that made a huge difference. And I give someone many, many years ago credit that convinced me that I could become a teacher of this industry, not just an operator. And that same individual was the same person that hired me originally. And and I owe him that gratitude. And I tell him every time I get a chance to talk to him, that I appreciate everything he did on that, because it made me a way better, not just a business person, but family and my wife and what's important to her and the children. And because I missed some years early on, and made sure I did miss them late.
Awesome. Love that, man. Thank you for sharing that. Two more questions so I can let you go, because I know you're a busy guy with 19 stores to handle. One is, I want you to think about the pawnbroker sitting in the store right now, listening to this. He's got 1 or 2 employees. We've talked about a couple of things to implement. I want you to give them one more gold nugget of what they should implement today. Like, get off this podcast and implement today. What do you think that would be?
Ask for help if you're not sure, and reach out to the people in this industry who are successful, who are willing to give you all the information they'll share. And that would be the one gold nugget I can tell everyone. And then allow people to make mistakes.
Love that, man. And then my last question for you, because you've mentioned books a lot. What are maybe 2 of your favorite reads that you think a pawnbroker? I know you read a lot of books, so that's hard. And you see a lot of books back here on my bookshelf. But let's do one book that you think a pawnbroker should read.
Well, there's a lot of them that are out there, and I'm very, very favorable to Jack Welch, The GE Way, because
Okay.
it's all about moving in one direction, 12 different companies. That's phenomenal. And I could go on and on and on. Like you said, 120 books is my goal every year to read.
Wowza.
And between Audible book in the gym in the morning and in the car, you can do it. And I would say, but man, I could just keep talking. There's probably 40 books I could rattle off that you could read that could make it better. You've had people. I lived Smart Management when John wrote that book. I lived that book. It's a great book for the pawn industry, but it still comes down to, if you hear it and then you don't react and you don't do it, you'll never achieve it.
Yeah. Love that. Jeff, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you.
For those of you who love the episode, Jeff, really, I've been to National Pawn. You guys are open-minded. I know that if another pawnbroker wants to go visit, you guys are open to it. Jeff is in the podcast community. Go to Facebook and just search Pawn Leaders Podcast Community, and stay tuned for the next episode of the Pawn Leaders Podcast.